We've covered a lot of treks in Nepal here. We've gone high on Manaslu, enjoyed the views from Poon Hill, explored Langtang's stunning wilderness. But today, well, we're doing something a little different. We are going back, right back to where it all began. Today's subject is the history of trekking in Nepal.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story.
It really is. This history isn't just about maps and mountains. It's about trade, faith, and the astonishing collision of ancient pathways with 20th century adventure.
Absolutely.
And all the insight we're drawing from today comes from an article that David Ways, who's a leading Nepal guidebook author, researched and wrote.
He really knows his stuff.
He does. Our mission today, for you listening, is to understand the full trajectory, how thousands of years of human movement evolved, almost accidentally, you could say, into the modern, organized, multi-million-dollar adventure tourism industry we know today.
And what's really fascinating here is getting your head around the sheer utility of these routes before they became recreational. We are tracing the evolution of what was, for centuries, just a deep cultural and economic necessity. Before anyone even thought of booking a guided tour, walking those mountain trails was simply the engine of life.
Just how people got around, traded.
Exactly. It connected distant communities, it facilitated vital cross-border trade, and it enabled these profoundly important spiritual journeys.
So the transformation we're tracking is immense.
It really is, taking centuries-old routes, established by traders and priests, and somehow converting them into a global adventure tourism destination.
And this really only happened after Nepal made that crucial decision to open its doors in the mid-20th century.
Yeah, pretty much. Spurred on by a handful of pioneers who immediately recognized the recreational potential just waiting there in those high passes.
Okay, let's unpack that ancient foundation then. Because this wasn't just people wandering around, was it? This was highly organized, strategic commerce, almost defining the country's existence.
Oh, absolutely.
Our research traces the start of this structured movement back to at least the 5th or 6th century BCE. That's when Indian traders were already making these difficult journeys up into the Kathmandu Valley.
And Nepal's geography made this almost inevitable, didn't it?
How so?
Well, it's strategically pinned right between the vast high Tibetan plateau to the north and the, densely populated Indian subcontinent to the south.
Right, the perfect pathway.
Exactly. This made it an essential transit point. It wasn't peripheral at all. It was integrated right into the ancient Silk Route network. Lhasa, the spiritual and economic hub of Tibet, and Kathmandu were absolutely vital stops.
Linking goods and ideas between China and India.
Precisely.
And the economic cornerstone of all this was the Tibet-Nepal salt trade route. I mean, this sounds like it was truly the lifeblood of the high mountains, sustaining entire civilizations.
It really was. It was this perfect, necessary barter system. You had Tibetan-speaking communities bringing high-altitude goods, primarily rock salt and fine wool down the passes, to exchange them for essential staples like grain, rice, and agricultural products coming up from the Nepalese lower hills.
So to sustain that level of organized activity, moving goods over those immense distances and, frankly, terrifying terrain must have required a pretty sophisticated infrastructure.
Oh, definitely. We are talking about caravan trips that could take months.
Months.
Yeah. And the economic focal point was the Kali Gandaki Gorge path. It became like a veritable highway of commerce.
Not just a trail.
No. Villages like Dana and Tukuch weren't just simple villages. They developed into these huge trade hubs. They even had specialized lodging known as bhatis.
What were those exactly?
They served as staging points, sort of like inns, where caravans rested, goods changed hands, security was managed. The whole logistical setup.
And what they were moving wasn't just basic stuff either, right? We're discussing a truly international supply chain operating centuries before we even thought about modern logistics.
Absolutely. You had Chinese silk flowing south towards India, and then Indian spices, tea, and jewels traveling north, destined for Tibet and, the rest of the Eurasian interior.
It's just amazing to think of that kind of wealth moving on the backs of mules and porters through these narrow, high-altitude trails.
It is incredible, isn't it? But our sources note that this traditional trade system, despite succeeding for centuries, eventually declined quite rapidly.
Really? When did that happen?
By the 1950s, basically, three main factors kind of killed its economic viability.
Okay.
First, increased Chinese political presence in Tibet disrupted the traditional routes. Second, improved roads were built within Nepal itself, offering alternatives. And maybe most crucially, the introduction of cheaper, Factory-produced iodized salt from India just flooded the market.
Ah, so the economics just didn't work anymore.
Exactly. That cheaper salt made the arduous, traditional cross-border bartering route economically obsolete. So those ancient routes just fell quiet.
So we connect this back to the bigger picture. Commerce wasn't the only thing driving people up into the mountains. You mentioned spiritual journeys.
Yes, absolutely. The mountain paths enabled spiritual journeys on a massive scale, often running concurrently with the trade routes. This established a sort of sacred landscape that really laid the ground zero for modern trekking.
So these spiritual routes created this deep history that makes the terrain still feel sacred even now.
Definitely. Two holy sites really stand out as foundational here. First, Muktanath Temple. It sits way up high at 3,710 meters in the Mustang District.
Okay.
It's a rare, really powerful place revered equally by Hindus and Buddhists as a place of liberation. It's a major focal point for spiritual travel from all across the subcontinent.
And the other one you mentioned, Gosakunda.
Exactly, Gosakunda. A stunning sacred lake resting way up at 4,380 meters. Legend holds it as the abode of Lord Shiva himself.
Wow.
And the sheer scale of the pilgrimage associated with Gosakunda is just breathtaking. During the festival of Janai Purnima, thousands upon thousands of pilgrims. Oh, yes. Arriving not just from Nepal, but also India, Sri Lanka. They undertake this immense physical effort, traveling on these difficult mountain routes just to bathe in its holy, icy waters.
Incredible dedication.
It really is. And it's these active spiritual paths that laid the precise foundational route for popular modern treks, including large parts of the famous Annapurna circuit.
So we have these ancient trade networks, these spiritual highways. But for the Western world, Nepal was essentially what? A lockbox, a closed, inaccessible country for centuries?
Pretty much, yeah, largely closed off to foreigners until the mid-20th century.
But there was a pioneering exception, wasn't there? A sort of crack in that massive Himalayan door.
There was. A British explorer named Bill Tillman.
Ah, Tillman.
He was an incredibly tenacious figure. He somehow managed to gain special, unprecedented permission in 1949 and 1950 to trek across the Everest, Helambu, and Kali Gandaki regions.
Before it officially opened.
Just before, yeah. His detailed written accounts of these journeys marked the very early Western footprints on these deep, ancient trails.
And the big change arrived almost immediately after Tillman's initial visits, didn't it? 1951. That marks the crucial political opening of Nepal to the outside world.
That's the turning point. It instantly set the foundation for organized tourism.
Which brings us to one of the great characters in Nepalese history, a major driver of this change, Boris Lasanovich.
Ah, Boris, what a story. A Russian émigré, famously former ballet dancer with the Ballet Russes.
A ballet dancer, setting up tourism in Nepal.
Incredible, isn't it? But he didn't just open a business. He basically created the entire infrastructure for hospitality as foreigners knew it. In 1951, he opened the Royal Hotel.
The first international standard hotel.
Exactly. And it immediately became the necessary social and logistical hub for every climber, explorer, diplomat, and curious visitor arriving in the capital. It was like a base camp of luxury in Kathmandu.
That is the perfect unexpected detail.
Yeah.
A former ballet dancer setting the stage for one of the world's most rugged adventure tourism industries. What was it about him?
He clearly recognized the economic potential immediately. He went on to organize Nepal's very first official tourist group in 1955.
Right.
And, of course, the legendary Yak and Yeti Bar, which he also ran. That became the essential meeting place for every mountaineer and adventurer for 2 decades, right up until 1971.
So Lasanovich provided the hospitality base.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, there was scientific work introducing the interior of Nepal to the West.
Yes, exactly. A Swiss geologist, Tony Hogan. During that same decade, the 50s, he walked approximately 14,000 miles across the entire country.
14,000 miles.
Yep. Conducting comprehensive geographical and geological surveys. His book that came out later, Nepal, The Kingdom in the Himalayas, was absolutely instrumental.
How so?
It provided the visual evidence, the photos, the descriptions of the remote foothills and hidden landscapes that truly captured the imagination of a wider international audience. It made the idea of visiting seem, well, tangible.
So Lasanovich built the base camp in Kathmandu, but the international imagination was really captured by those pushing beyond the capital onto the ice itself.
Definitely. Which brings us directly to the mountaineering era. The global spotlight just zoomed in intensely on those 8,000-meter peaks.
And the first major global achievement that really solidified Nepal's status came in 1950 with Annapurna's thrust.
That's right. The French expedition, led by Maurice Herzog, they were the first team in history to successfully summit an 8,000-meter peak.
A huge human feat.
Massive. And it put Nepal squarely on the global map for high-altitude climbing and exploration.
But the truly seismic event, the one that cemented Nepal's future in the global consciousness, that had to be Mount Everest in 1953.
Oh, without a doubt. The historic ascent by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay Sherpa didn't just make headlines. It fundamentally repositioned Nepal.
Wow.
It solidified its status as the premier mountain destination in the world. It sparked this massive, enduring global interest in Himalayan exploration that directly, led straight into the commercial trekking industry.
Okay, so we transitioned from that era of exploration and high-altitude conquest in the 50s into the 1960s, which is the undeniable birth of the commercial industry, right?
Exactly. The shift from pure exploratory mountaineering to organized recreational tourism really took hold in the mid-1960s.
And this is where we meet the pivotal figure known as the father of trekking in Nepal, Colonel Jimmy Roberts.
Colonel Roberts, yes. It's fascinating that commercial trekking was pioneered by a military man.
Why him specifically?
Well, Roberts used his expertise in military logistics and supply chain management. He recognized the commercial potential that the post-Everest spotlight had created. He realized that for every person who wanted to actually scale Everest, there were probably hundreds of others who just wanted to walk the beautiful high-altitude paths that Hillary and Tenzing had used. But they needed help doing it. They needed organization.
So he founded Mountain Travel.
In 1964, yes, the very first professional trekking company in Nepal. He masterfully transformed the existing logistical support system used for climbing expeditions, the Sherpas, cooks, equipment, into a ready-made packaged holiday experience for tourists.
And history even records the first customers vividly, doesn't it?
It does. In 1964, 3 American women who were expatriates living down in Calcutta were the first official commercial trekkers under Roberts' new system.
And Roberts described them.
Endearingly, yes, as a sporting trio of enthusiasts.
It's an amazing detail, isn't it? That the origin of this massive global industry started with 3 women just enjoying an adventurous holiday.
It really is.
And this organized model was instantly successful.
Oh, yeah. Mountain Travel offered these all-inclusive guided expeditions. You got experienced Sherpas, dedicated porters, specialized cooks, the works.
Making it accessible.
Exactly. This system made the previously remote and logistically complex high trails suddenly achievable for the, average adventurous tourist. And the monopoly was striking. Mountain Travel was the sole organized trekking company in Nepal until 1968.
And we also see the Nepalese government getting involved around this time, recognizing the potential.
We do. The Nepal Tourism Development Committee was established back in 1961. That clearly signaled the state's intention to actively promote and structure tourism as a key strategic economic sector for the future.
Right. So by the 1970s and 80s, we hit the definite boom era. Trekking went from being this organized niche activity to a structured, hugely popular global tourism phenomenon.
The numbers really tell the story of that rapid, transformative acceleration and the sheer power of tourism as an economic driver for Nepal.
Give us an idea.
Well, in 1962, Nepal saw just 6,179 tourists in total.
Okay, tiny.
Tiny. By the 1970s, tourism revenue had absolutely exploded. It surpassed the traditional centuries-old pillars of the Nepalese economy, specifically things like rice exports and remittances from Gurkha soldiers serving abroad, to become Nepal's single major source of foreign revenue.
That's a fundamental shift.
Huge. It fundamentally affected the political landscape, employment patterns. Suddenly, mountain communities, especially the Sherpas who had that specialized knowledge of high altitude and logistics, they transitioned from a largely subsistence agricultural existence to a powerful service economy. They gained immense new economic power within the national structure.
And this boom was made possible by a revolution in infrastructure, but interestingly, not one built by the government initially. It was the establishment of tea houses and lodges along the popular routes.
That was the absolute game changer. Think Everest Base Camp, the main Annapurna trails, these little family-run lodges popping up.
How did that change things so much?
Well, the teahouse model didn't just add comfort, it dramatically lowered the barrier to entry. It essentially eliminated the need for those massive porter chains, cooks, and all the expedition-grade camping equipment that Colonel Roberts' model required.
Ah, so it democratized it.
Exactly. It democratized high-altitude trekking, making the experience accessible for a much wider range of travelers, not just those wealthy enough to afford a full all-inclusive expedition.
And we also saw a corresponding demographic shift around then too, didn't we?
We did, quite dramatically. The 1970s counterculture influence brought a whole new type of traveler.
The hippie trail effect.
Precisely. The independent, budget-conscious hippie seeking spiritual journeys, particularly drawn towards the mountains and the mystique of the Himalayas. This diversified the trekking demographic way beyond just the traditional hardcore climbers.
Creating a long-term base.
Yes, creating this long-term constituency of budget backpackers who supported the local economies directly through staying in and eating at the tea houses.
But the increasing numbers, inevitably, must have demanded some kind of institutional response regarding environmental conservation, recognizing that uncontrolled tourism could destroy the very thing people came to see.
Precisely. That concern led to a very significant moment in 1986, the establishment of the Annapurna Conservation Area, or ACA.
What made the ACA special?
Its structure was revolutionary at the time. It was specifically designed as a locally managed, self-funding system. This was a sharp contrast to the traditional top-down centralized management of national parks elsewhere.
So the idea was,
The goal was to regulate tourism while ensuring that the financial benefits, the permit fees, for example, flow directly back to the local mountain communities who are actually managing the land. The idea was to create a vested interest in conservation at the local level.
okay, now fast forwarding to modern trekking. While the mountain environment remains magnificent, the industry today faces some pretty significant systemic challenges. Issues that David Ways' research really highlights, specifically around sustainability and entrenched corruption.
Yes, and it's absolutely crucial we cover this impartially because these modern challenges directly impact the future survival and, frankly, the ethical operation of the entire tourism sector in Nepal.
Right. The most shocking issue to emerge recently seems to be the infamous helicopter rescue scams. This became a major crisis point back in 2018.
It was huge. Our sources indicate that in just the first 5 months of 2018 alone, there were over 1,300 helicopter rescues.
1,300 in 5 months.
Yes, leading to $6.5 million in insurance claims. And an absolutely staggering 39% of those claims were flagged as suspicious. The average claim was around $20,000.
39% suspicious. What kind of fraud was involved?
Well, it was deeply disturbing. Authorities cracked down on 15 companies in 2018 for allegedly selling trips at a loss.
Okay.
And then, in a truly shocking move, allegedly inducing illness in trekkers. Sometimes using simple substances like baking soda mixed into food
Baking soda, why?
to trigger extremely expensive evacuations for the insurance payout. The goal of the baking soda was apparently to induce immediate, violent digestive distress, severe vomiting, diarrhea closely mimicking the symptoms of life-threatening altitude sickness.
Okay, fake an emergency.
Exactly, thereby creating a seemingly legitimate reason for a very costly helicopter evacuation, all for the insurance fraud. It exposed a really deep-seated corruption issue.
That's horrifying. Beyond the scams, the physical nature of the iconic trails themselves is facing dramatic, permanent alteration due to road construction.
Yes, this is a huge conflict, and we're not talking about small, necessary access roads here. Up to 75% of the classic, iconic Annapurna circuit is now impacted by roads.
75%.
That's the figure often cited. This causes constant dust, heavy vehicle traffic, soil erosion, noise pollution. It fundamentally alters the quiet, natural walking experience that drew people there in the first place.
And this road issue connects directly to policy problems, doesn't it? Like permits.
It does. Take the restricted area permit for places like Upper Mustang. It costs $500, but that fee persists despite new roads now giving relatively easy vehicle access deep into the region.
So the criticism is?
The criticism is heavy, that the permit is less about genuine conservation. I mean, vehicles are now driving through, potentially causing more damage, and is more just a raw revenue tactic for the government rather than a genuine attempt to protect the unique environment or culture.
And there are also issues with broken enforcement of rules that are meant to protect the trekkers themselves.
Yeah, that's another layer. For example, the 2023 ban on solo trekking, which was brought in citing safety concerns,
Right.
reportedly lacks any meaningful enforcement on the ground. You hear about non-existent checkpoints on many routes. This is compounded by a lack of unified national control.
How so?
Well, Solukhumbu, the Everest region, actually rejected the centralized TIMS card, that's the Trekker Information Management System, entirely. They introduced their own Trek card system instead.
And their system.
Still allows solo trekkers. So
Uh-huh.
you have this fragmentation, this lack of a single, clear national policy, which is a major organizational challenge for safety and management.
Okay, so serious challenges. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There have been significant positive developments and successful adaptations to modernity as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's important to see both sides. The roads and air travel, while definitely detrimental to parts of the classic routes, have successfully opened genuinely remote areas like Upper Mustang and Manaslu to wider tourism.
So diversifying options.
Exactly. Diversifying options and taking some pressure off the overcrowded classics like Everest Base Camp and the main Annapurna Trail.
And technology must help immensely now.
For sure. GPS mapping is ubiquitous. There are widely available online resources for planning, and now there are legitimate, regulated helicopter services that genuinely enhance both planning capabilities and, crucially, safety in real emergencies.
And importantly, conservation-minded operators spearheaded the development of the NAT trails, right?
Yes, the new Annapurna trekking trails. This was a really positive response to the road issue. These are explicit, well-defined, pedestrian-only routes designed specifically to detour trekkers away from the congested, dusty, polluting roads on the Annapurna circuit.
Trying to preserve the walking experience.
Exactly, preserving that authentic walking experience where possible.
And that concept of regional autonomy you mentioned, like in Silikumbu with their Trek card system, that's seen as a positive sign.
I think many see it that way, yes. It demonstrates successful local control over sustainable tourism management. It ensures that local mountain communities, who are the ones most impacted by tourism, have a genuine, effective say in how their resources and the flow of tourists are managed.
So looking ahead, what does the future hold for this incredible industry? It sounds like a collision course between necessary digital transformation and this intense market conflict over premiumization versus traditional budget tourism.
That seems to be the core tension, yes. We are seeing a major push toward centralization and often driven by safety concerns, especially after the helicopter scams.
Right.
The controversial mandatory guide requirements and the push toward centralized digital tracking are definitely forcing the industry into a much more organized, perhaps more controlled structure.
And the most likely digital solution seems to be.
The eventual implementation of a unified digital trekking card, something that finally replaces the fragmented TIMS and Trek card systems.
And the benefit of that would be?
Well, this unified system would ideally be linked to centralized databases for immediate safety monitoring and emergency response. So if you, the trekker, get into trouble, the authorities would know your precise location almost instantly.
Okay, that makes sense for safety.
And on the less dramatic side, just convenience. Digital services, vastly improved Wi-Fi connectivity even high up on the trails, reliable mobile payment systems, these will likely become absolutely standard, enhancing convenience and reducing the need for trekkers to carry large sums of cash.
But the core market strategy itself is shifting profoundly, you mentioned, moving away from just volume.
Yes, the focus seems to be moving from maximizing sheer numbers, from expansion towards sustainable management, and importantly, maximizing revenue through premium, high-value experiences.
How does that look in practice?
Well, the diversification strategy involves increasing the promotion of sections of the Great Himalayan Trail and these newly opened, more remote areas. But the big economic bet seems to be on the premium model,
Which means?
focusing on developing eco-luxury lodging in the popular areas like Annapurna and Everest. The aim is to attract a demographic that's less sensitive to high fees, generating significantly more revenue per tourist while theoretically minimizing the overall environmental footprint compared to thousands of budget travelers.
However, here's where the conflict comes in. We must report this impartially, as David's research notes. This premium model is being heavily dismissed by quite a few influential international experts.
That's right. They argue that it ignores the persistent fundamental corruption issues. The helicopter scams haven't completely vanished. The pollution concerns remain. And the underlying reality of building expensive roads, supposedly for the rich, that then simply crumble away every monsoon season due to poor construction quality, essentially wasting vast sums of money.
So the risk is?
The risk is that this top-down, premium-focused approach alienates Nepal's long-term loyal supporters who are primarily the independent, budget, and backpacker tourists in favor of maybe more fleeting high-end visitors.
And what are the alternatives being suggested?
Well, international suggestions often encourage adopting something more like a Thailand model. A model which supports a broad and diverse range of tourists, yes, wealthy private tours, but also long-term backpackers, with the crucial emphasis for both being on low environmental impact and ensuring genuine benefit flows to local communities.
Finally, we absolutely cannot talk about the future without addressing the most urgent threat, which is climate change.
No, it's unavoidable. This is evidenced starkly by the receding glaciers you can see, the rapidly changing, more unpredictable weather pattern.
And the impact on trekking.
These changes are actively increasing the risks of natural hazards. More potential for avalanches, unpredictable flash floods, especially on the high altitude routes. It's a direct safety concern.
So future investment needs to prioritize climate resilience.
Absolutely. This means constructing trails and bridges that can actually withstand these changing conditions. It means installing early warning systems in high-risk zones, like areas near potentially unstable glacial lakes, to protect both trekkers and the mountain communities living there.
And we keep coming back to this infrastructure and governance conflict, don't we? The roads versus the trails.
It's the core physical conflict on the ground in many areas. The divide between road building, which serves local commerce and necessity, let's be clear, and the trekking industry needs a permanent, sustainable solution.
Like the mat trails.
Exactly. That means dedicated, well-maintained Nat-style detour trails are essential for preserving the experience on the classic routes. But this requires genuine, proper cooperation between different government departments, roads, tourism, forestry, which has notoriously been lacking in the past.
And local governance seems key.
Ultimately, the research strongly suggests that successful regional autonomy, maybe taking the cue from Solukhumbu's Trek card system, is crucial for the future. It helps ensure that tourism benefits the money, the jobs, the conservation fees actually stay within the mountain communities themselves, rather than being managed and potentially diverted by centralized agencies far away in Kathmandu.
Right, lots to consider there. Okay, before we wrap up, let's quickly review some key historical milestones from the centuries of movement we just covered. Just to reinforce for everyone listening, when did recreational trekking truly begin in Nepal?
Well, the seeds were sown immediately after Nepal opened up in the 1950s, thanks to pioneers like Bill Tillman getting access. But the formal commercial industry didn't really emerge until the 1960s.
Okay. And who was that father figure who founded commercial trekking by transforming logistics into tourism?
That would be Colonel Jimmy Roberts, using his military logistics background to start mountain travel back in 1964.
Got it. What specific role did those early famous mountaineering ascents play in attracting the first wave of global attention?
Oh, they were huge. The 1950 Annapurna eye ascent by the French, and then the globally televised 1953 Everest ascent by Hillary and Tenzing. Those were the definitive spotlights. They proved the impossible was possible and really positioned the Himalayas as the ultimate destination for human exploration and adventure.
And thinking about the whole journey, how has the trekking experience fundamentally changed since the era of Colonel Roberts' fully catered camping expeditions?
It's evolved dramatically, hasn't it? From those ancient trade and pilgrimage routes, it became commercial tourism. Then the introduction of the teahouse model in the 70s really democratized access, making it available to many more people. And today, the industry is navigating these really complex challenges: road encroachment, systemic corruption issues like the scams, and this urgent need for unified, climate-resilient sustainability efforts. It's a continuous evolution.
It certainly is.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, to maybe carry forward and mull over. We've seen this incredibly long history of Nepal's trails, evolving from sacred paths trod by pilgrims and traders to major commercial ventures. Considering the modern conflict we discussed between the high-revenue premium tourism model, which often relies on road infrastructure and luxury lodging, versus the traditional low-impact budget traveler model, how can Nepal choose a path forward? How can it honor the ancient spiritual intent and natural beauty of the trails while successfully navigating the intense economic pressures of the 21st century global tourism market?
That is a profound question and definitely one worth exploring as you consider the ethics and impact of travel today. Now, we absolutely have to acknowledge David Ways, the author and researcher, whose incredibly thorough work formed the backbone of our discussion today. His commitment to independent, unbiased, and really honest travel advice is just invaluable, especially when you're looking at an industry facing so many complex issues. So if you're planning a trip to Nepal, or maybe you just want to dive deeper into the history and the specific routes, we strongly encourage you to check out his website. It's called The Longest Way Home Nepal Travel website. If you're looking for guidebooks written by someone who actually walks the trails extensively himself, which sadly isn't always the case with commercial guidebooks these days, David's work is essential. Specifically, look for his guidebooks. The main Trekking in Nepal guidebook, there's one called First Time Trekking in Nepal, which is great for beginners, and the Full Nepal guidebook, which covers more than just trekking. They're known for being incredibly detailed, accurate, and importantly, independent. You can get them for your tablet, phone, laptop, or even get print versions. Definitely worth checking out if you want to explore the Himalayas with real confidence.